Hey there guys, Pinobi here bringing you a Yu-Gi-Oh! Decklist video. It has been a while since I've done a Yu-Gi-Oh! Decklist video, so hopefully you guys will enjoy this. This is pretty much my way to play plants. That's basically what this video entails. I think that a lot of us that have been playing the game for a while have made some sort of plant deck. It's been very popular in a lot of different meta games, including the current one. Tengu plants is, hitting the game by storm, so to speak. And I pretty much have a style of plants that I really enjoy playing. To be honest, it's not completely competitively viable right this second, just because it has a really, really, really difficult matchup against Six Samurai. It's pretty much impossible to consistently beat Six Samurai players with this deck. But after Six Samurai becomes a thing of the past with nerfs or bans, etc., limitations, I think this deck could become very, very viable. Pretty much, whenever I play a Tengu plant deck with this deck, I am almost always victorious, so I thought that was a very interesting note to make. Let's just go ahead and get into it. It's actually going to be a Gigavice deck list, so yeah, you may not have been expecting that. So let's just go ahead and get into it. First of all, with the monsters, you're going to have two Gigaplants. Gigaplant's pretty much the center of this deck. His effect is, he's a Gemini monster. When he's Gemini summoned, once per turn, you can special summon an insect or plant-type monster from the hand or graveyard. Primarily, you're going to be summoning plant-type monsters from the graveyard, but I guess, if you needed to, you could do other things as well there. So that's that. Next, you have two Lone Fire Blossom. Lone Fire Blossom is a key card in any plant deck, attributing a plant-type monster, including itself, if you so desire, which is usually the case, to summon a plant-type monster from the deck. So you're normally going to be wanting to summon Gigaplant himself, which starts a lot of crazy shenanigans. And I'll show you some of the combos of this deck towards the end of the video. Next, to keep up the plant engine, you have your 1-star tuner Spore. Spore is very important for this deck. He sets up a lot of combos. His ability to remove a plant-type monster from play to summon himself as a tuner with the number of stars of the removed monster plus his, which is 1, is very, very useful. Having plants removed from play comes into play later with other cards of the deck, but this card really can be your bread and butter for a lot of your combos. Next, you have Float Bulb, your secondary 1-star plant tuner. His effect to mill 1 to summon himself is really useful. You can use it to summon himself and then tribute it for Gigaplant if you are having difficulty getting Gigaplant out that way. You can use it to Synchro Summon. You can use it to go into Formula Synchron. You can use it to synchro into pretty much anything, really. So, very, very useful card, of course. And to finish off our little plant engine, you have Dandelion. Dandelion's effect, obviously, is whenever it's sent to the graveyard, you get 2 fluff tokens, which are, of course, level 1, so you can synchro with your 1-star tuners for a Formula Synchron. Your tokens are not tributable the turn they're summoned, so be careful with that when you're playing around it to try to summon Gigaplant, because you can't really do that. But overall, it's just really, really useful. There's a lot of discarding cards in this deck, especially when you consider synchros and things like that, so very, very useful. And then the last plants of the deck, not really part of that engine, is Mystic Tomato, which is whenever he's destroyed by battle, summoning a Dark-type monster 1500 attack or less in attack position, is really, really useful for the deck because this deck is kind of an OTK deck, primarily. You're usually going to hit hard in 1, maybe 2 turns, but primarily if you have a way to clear their back row, such as Giant Trunade, you should finish it all up in 1 turn, no problem. So you need to be able to play defensive until you can get those cards aligned properly, and that's what Mystic Tomato really allows you to do. So his targets are the last plant of the deck, of course, Violet Witch, which when she's destroyed by battle, you can add a plant-type monster of 1500 defense or less from the deck to your hand, which in this deck is every single plant-type monster. So if you need Gigaplant in your hand, which you really don't normally, you usually want Lone Fire. Lone Fire is the primary target. But if you need a Gigaplant, if you wanted to get Dandelion to discard it for tokens, if you needed to do anything, really, you have the options there for you. Spore, Glow Bulb, etc. So it's a really useful plant engine there. You can, of course, Mystic Tomato into Violet Witch if you need a little bit more defense. Next Mystic Tomato target, which is the primary target that you're going to go for, is Sangan, because whenever Sangan is sent to the graveyard, no matter how it's sent to the graveyard, battle, monster effect, card effect, doesn't matter, you can add a monster of 1500 attack or less from your deck to your hand, which again, you're going to want to go for Lone Fire, because Lone Fire is one of the 3 key cards to the deck that really make this deck go off. We'll get into the other ones in a bit. Then we have Plague Spreader Zombie. It's a really good card to be discarded, and as I said, there's a lot of discarding involved in this deck, or sending, or whatever you want to call it, to the graveyard. Also, there's like a little bit of milling with Glow Bulb and other things, primarily just Glow Bulb actually. And it's also a good card if you had to just to play defensively. You can just set it and then let it get ran over and get it into the graveyard to use for synchro plays later. Next we have the last target that you're actually probably going to want to go for, which is Level Eater. Level Eater is my personal tech into a Gigavice deck. I haven't really ever seen anyone play Level Eater in a Gigavice deck before, and that's part of the reason I love it so much, is it's really, really interesting. And it just works really, really well. There's a pretty advanced combo. If you're familiar with the Power Tool combo of Gigavice, which if you're not, don't worry, I will show you towards the end of the video. I've kind of added a step with Level Eater that makes it a lot more broken and a lot more OTK-ish than it already was. So I really, really like it, and hopefully you guys, I don't know, like it as well. It's pretty good. Next, we're moving on to another phase of the deck, which is sort of the more defensive monsters. Because like I said, this deck does need to gather the right cards to be able to go off. So first you have one Battle Fader. Battle Fader is obviously a really good defensive card. Whenever your opponent attacks you directly, you can drop it from your hand. It'll become special summoned, and it'll end their battle phase and negate that attack, which is really, really useful. Obviously good to protect yourself. And this deck plays only one trap card, which you'll see later, so you definitely want to have some monster defense, which is what Battle Fader affords you. And whenever he's removed from the field after being summoned, he gets removed from play, which actually can be a good thing for the deck. Next, along the same lines, you have Gorz. Gorz doesn't negate the attack, and he does not end the battle phase, so in that sense he's weaker. But when he summons himself, as opposed to being a 0 attack, 0 defense monster like Battle Fader, he's 2700 attack, 2500 defense, which is very nice. And he summons a token equal to the damage you took, whose attack and defense are equal to the damage you took. He also protects you, sort of, or gives you some field presence after taking effect damage, because you can trigger his effect to effect damage, and instead of getting a token, your opponent will get burned. So, obviously, Gorz can be good monster defense for this deck. Then the last monsters of the deck, and the last defensive core, I should say, is Triple Cyber Valley. Cyber Valley is a really nice card. It has a lot of different effects, which all can come into play, but the primary effect that you're going to be using it for is whenever it's attacked, you can remove it from play to negate that battle phase and draw a card. Although it also has a very useful effect of remove Cyber Valley and another monster you control from play to draw 2 cards, which actually has a lot of ways to come in handy as well. So that's it for the monsters. Pretty heavy monster lineup, but now going into the even heavier spell lineup in a moment here. But yeah, honestly, I think the Gigavice is just such a good deck type. It's got a lot of awesome combos. For the spells for draw power, you have Allure of Darkness. Allure of Darkness because you have 7 dark targets in the deck, so it's pretty viable, especially considering that there's so many ways to mill through, or not mill, but thin out your deck and speed it up and etc. So it's hardly ever a dead card, and you could always pitch it if it were. Next you have Card Destruction, which seems weird in a meta where a lot of decks are running things that want to go to the graveyard. New and upcoming Fable decks, Plant decks, even Gladiator Beasts with Bestiary if they play right, or I don't know, if they get lucky. Just a lot of decks can benefit from having things in the graveyard in general, but it really doesn't matter because a lot of times the turn you're activating this, you're going to go off anyway, so it shouldn't matter that your opponent gets set up. Then the next draw card, or search card I should say, is Triple Gold Sarcophagus. I know that this card seems really unreliable because it's so slow. You activate it, select any card in your deck, it gets removed from play for 2 turns, and then it goes to your hand. And those 2 turns is a pretty big deal. But like I said, you play a lot of defense in this deck. You have a lot of monsters, kind of like little floating monsters that can sit there and wall you up. Also, Game 1, if you're thinking of it in a competitive standpoint, you're playing a match. Game 1, your opponent really doesn't know what you're up to most of the time, so they're not going to be as offensive, I tend to find. So either way, it's not really a big holdback, especially Game 1 and all that kind of stuff. You can always set cards as bluffs as well, since your opponent's not going to know you're only playing 1 trap, although I don't really like to extend that way, but whatever. Then for a little bit more speed, you have a 1-for-1, which is, send a monster from your hand to the graveyard, especially summon a level 1 monster. Your targets are, of course, your Gloat Bulb, Spore, Cyber Valleys, and Level Leader. So you have plenty of targets to make it viable, and all of the targets are pretty good things to send from your hand to the graveyard as well. Also, on that list would be Plague Spreader Zombie. He's level 2, but you can send him with 1-for-1. And it just gets you set up for big plays a lot of the times. Foolish Burial, like I said, along the same lines as 1-for-1, sending a lot of those key cards to the graveyard. Next, moving into another segment of the spell lineup, which is pretty important for this deck, which is the equips. You have the primary equip card, 3 Supervise. Whenever it's equipped to a Gemini monster, which in this case is only going to be Gigaplant, same with most Gemini decks, or same with most Gigavice decks, I should say. It activates their effect, and whenever this card is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a normal type monster from your graveyard. And since Gemini monsters are considered normal type monsters in the graveyard, you can summon Gigaplant with this card. Also, a really important fact to know is that if you synchro with a Gigaplant that is equipped with Supervise, Gigaplant goes to the graveyard first, and then you can chain with Supervise's effect and special summon that exact same Gigaplant back. So, very useful to know, and that's one of the 3 cards that really combos with this deck along with Lone Fire Blossom. Moving on to the other equipped spells, you have 2 Mark of the Rose, really, really good card in plant decks in general, really powerful card. Gives you a lot of control, especially for this deck, which doesn't play traps. It gives you just a lot of monster control. Since a lot of decks try to stop summons with Bottomless and Warning, and this deck doesn't do that, you need a way to deal with big threats once they hit the field, and Mark of the Rose does that for you. Remove from play a plant-type monster, which is useful in itself. Any plant-type monster of your choosing, which gives you a lot of viability for other cards in the deck. And you can take control of one of their monsters, and pretty much whoever's turn it is gets to control the monster you select. So if you pick your opponent's Stardust Dragon, you get it during your turns, and whenever you end your turn, they get it back. And whenever they end their turn, you get it back, etc., etc. So really important to note. And it's just a really good card. You can take control of their monster and remove it with Cyber Rally. You can take control of their monster and tribute it. You can take control of their monster and synchro with it. A lot of options. You can take control of their monster and attack for game if you can, do what you got to do. Next, I should say, is 2 Different Dimension Reincarnation. Really good card. Discard a card from your hand, any card from your hand. So if you did accidentally, or not accidentally, but if you did somehow dead draw an Allure of Darkness, or a late game Gold Sarcophagus where you can't really use it effectively, you can discard one of those cards to, as the cost for this to special summon one of your remove from play monsters. And this is where all those removal effects come in so much handy. Let's say you remove from play a Lone Fire Blossom with your Mark of the Rose. Now you can DDR to get it back, and that is, of course, one of the 3 cards that combos into your, broken plays. So really, really useful. Last equip card for the deck is United We Stand. This deck needs a lot of equip cards because you're using Power Tool Dragon's effect a lot, which I'll go more into in a minute. And basically, United We Stand is just a really good card. It increases the attack of one of your monsters by 800. Attack and defense, sorry, for by 800 for every face-up monster you control. And this deck swarms like crazy, so United We Stand can give up to a 4,000 attack power boost, which a lot of times lets you push for game. So really, really useful. So that is almost it. For the rest of the spells, we have, for Monster Resurrection, you have, of course, Monster Reborn, which is a staple. Then you have 2 Miracle Fertilizer. Miracle Fertilizer is a really good card. It allows you to special summon a plant-type monster from your graveyard. And in a lot of decks, it's not that useful, but for this deck, where you are, like I said, kind of pushing it all in one turn, it's really helpful. The downside to this card is it's kind of a one-trick pony, because whenever the monster is removed from the field, this card's destroyed. So if you bring back a Lone Fire and tribute it, this card goes away with it, but that's not really the point. It does stop you from normal summoning, which is a big deal, so use it during turns that you know you're not going to need to normal summon. That's the best advice I can give to play that well. Then to combo with that, as well as being one of the main cards in the deck, you have Giant Trunade. You can use Miracle Fertilizer, then Giant Trunade it, and then use it again. That is viable. The monster that you got the first time will still be intact. Also, this is the best and most reliable way to clear your opponent's back rows. You can always try to synchro for Black Rose before you go into one of your big plays, which, believe it or not, you'll have plenty of economy to do that. But this is just the best, most reliable way, and it's going to allow you pretty much to win if you get it off successfully, or it's going to force your opponent to beta Solemn or something, which a lot of times will make you win anyway. Last spells, we have Dark Hole for monster destruction, staple. Mind Control for monster manipulation works a lot like Mark of the Rose, except for you won't be able to tribute the monster you take control. So in that sense, it's not quite as useful, but it allows you to take control of their monsters and synchro with them, which is obviously really, really good. And then the last spell is Scapegoat. Scapegoat's pretty much going to give you some defense for the deck, because like I said, you're only running one trap card, and you need some defense to hold off to get your combos off. Plus it combos with Cyber Valley. You can remove Cyber Valley and a Scapegoat token to draw 2 cards. That is legal. You can also synchro with one of your 1-star tuners for a Formula Synchron to draw a card, and all that kind of shenanigans. So it totally works. And our last card is going to be Treacherous Trap Hole. As long as there's no trap cards in your graveyard, when you activate it, you can destroy any 2 monsters on the field. That's such a viable card. It's such a good card. It's chainable. So, like, let's say your opponent already had 2 monsters on the field and they MST'd it. You could chain it, destroy their 2 monsters, and their MST would have been wasted. So that's essentially a +2. And even if you don't chain it, it's still a +1. So that card economy really helps this deck out, and it really gives it a nice, defensive structure and all that kind of stuff. So that's the deck. I will go into combos and stuff in a second. And, yeah, let's jump to the extra deck first, though, because I know that some people want to see that information just to know what kind of card choices that they should make. The extra deck is fairly straightforward, but regardless, here it is. Shooting Star Dragon, just because this deck can get Shooting Star Dragon actually kind of easily, because a lot of the combos involve going to Formula Synchron, which of course leads to Shooting Star, and his effect is obviously really useful. So there's that. Scrap Dragon is really good with this deck because you're running Level Leader, you're also running Scapegoat, you're running tokens, cards that get tokens, I should say. You're running cards that allow you to take control of your opponent's monsters, which you can then destroy with Scrap Dragon, and all that kind of stuff. Colossal Fighter. Colossal Fighter is really good. I do believe that they officially re-errated or reworded the ruling or whatever to stop the Colossal Fighter Armory Arm OTK, which makes him less useful. But he's still a 28 beater that can revive himself, so you could even use him defensively if you had to. He's a good card still. Dark Ruler Archfiend. I do still have to play this in the extra deck for this particular deck. A lot of decks aren't really using him anymore. Because this deck, like I said, is defensive, if you kind of need that life point boost for security, you can get that with him. Plus, you can pay 1,000 to negate cards that target psychics other than monster effects. So that can be really useful when you're getting ready to make a push as well. 1 Stardust Dragon, pretty much, the beast of all synchros, all that kind of stuff. Really good card, obviously. 1 Black Rose Dragon. I have to only play 1 because usually when you're synchroing for 7, you're synchroing for Power Tool Dragon. So I could play 2, but I'd rather play 1 in this particular deck. 3 Power Tool Dragon. Power Tool Dragon is pretty much the man. He is the synchro of the deck. If you could only play 1 synchro monster in this deck for some random reason, it would be him. So always play your Power Tools. For level 6s, you have your Gaia Knight Force of Earth, just in case you need it, and your Bryonic. Yeah, Bryonic is really beastly in this deck. Like I said, there's a lot of cards that are worth discarding from your hand, and he lets you do that to get field control, which allows you to win in 1 turn. Ally of Justice Catastor gives you the edge over any non-dark type monster in battle. Armory Arm, just because you can equip it to one of your monsters, and a lot of times you'll have so much cards that you really wish that you could summon more than 5 monsters. So he's kind of your way to go into Armory Arm, equip it, and then summon something else. So it's really useful in that aspect, as well as step synchroing and whatever else. And lastly, but definitely not least, 3 Formula Synchron. I could only play 2. I've opted of bringing it down to 2, because a lot of times, by the time you've summoned 2, you're going to win anyway, and the 3rd one is sort of overkill. But It works really well with the step-by-step level leader combo, which I'll show you. And yeah, just really good card. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the deck. I think it's the way that I would play plants. It's the way I have been playing it. And let's go ahead and get into the combos. Hey there guys, Pinobi here, showing you the combos for this Gigavice plant deck profile. Just pretty much showing you how exactly with just 2 cards, being Lonefire Blossom and Supervise, this deck can really go off. I know that my webcam quality is not very good, and also it might be even worse than the rest of the video. Either way, I'm going to be saying things out loud, so hopefully you can understand as I go along. There's like a really bad glare right now, but yeah, with just Supervise and Lonefire, you can easily do some serious ponage. If your opponent has no back row, of course. If they do have back row, you might need to add Giant Trunade to this 2-card combo and make it a 3-card combo. So, either way, you summon Lonefire Blossom, and you're going to sacrifice it for a Gigaplant, or if you want, you can sacrifice it for a second Lonefire Blossom and sacrifice that for a Gigaplant. Now, with Gigaplant, you're going to play Supervise. Now that he has his ability, you're going to bring back a Lonefire Blossom from the graveyard, and you're going to offer it for a Spore. Then, you're going to synchro your 1-star Spore with your level 6 Gigaplant for a level 7 Power Tool Dragon. And then Supervise gets sent to the graveyard, and it'll bring back your Gigaplant. So now you have a 23 beater and a 24 beater. And then you can activate Power Tool Dragon's effect to select 3 equipped cards from your graveyard. You're going to pick Supervise, Different Dimension Reincarnation, and a second Supervise if you still have a second one in your deck. So now you play, well, now your opponent gets to randomly select one of these 3 cards. And let's say they pick Supervise, because you have a 2 out of 3 chance of picking Supervise. You play Supervise, bring back Lonefire Blossom. Now you can sacrifice that Lonefire Blossom for a Glow-Up Bulb, which you can then synchro with the Gigaplant for Power Tool Dragon. Supervise gets sent to the graveyard and brings back Gigaplant. And you can pretty much do the same thing over and over. And you, of course, can do different combos along the way. For example, let's say instead of getting Supervise, like you would prefer, your opponent picks a Different Dimension Reincarnation. You can activate Spore's effect to remove from play, let's say, a Lonefire, a Special Summon Spore. Now you could synchro Spore with Gigaplant for a Power Tool Dragon, and hopefully you pull your last Supervise, and then you can use the Different Dimension Reincarnation to summon the Lonefire Blossom, pop that off for your second Gigaplant, and equip that with Supervise, and keep the shenanigans going. Now, that's only with 2 cards. That's only with your Lonefire and your Supervise, and maybe 1 card in your hand to discard for a Different Dimension Reincarnation. However, there's actually a better combo that you can do that is almost the same setup. The only real difference is that you need to have a Level Leader in your graveyard, which is not that difficult considering that you run Foolish Burial as well as other things. So let's try this again, but this time with Level Leader. So let's say you summon Lonefire, you pop it off for another Lonefire, which you pop off for Gigaplant. Now, instead of doing what you did before, you're going to lower Gigaplant's level, which will make him a level 5, to summon your Level Leader. Now you use Gigaplant's effect with Supervise to summon Lonefire Blossom and sacrifice it to summon Spore. Now, you synchro Spore and Level Eater, which is 2, for Formula Synchron. Formula Synchron's effect lets you draw a card. Okay, in this situation we draw a different dimension reincarnation. Now, since Gigaplant's level 5, you can synchro 2 and 5 for Power Tool Dragon. Supervise will bring back Gigaplant. And you can pretty much do the exact same combo, but just keep lowering Gigaplant's level to 5 and bringing back Level Leader and synchroing for Formula Synchron first, and you're going to keep getting that additional draw. So, that's pretty much the combo for the deck. There's more intricate little combos, but that is the big engine for how exactly you OTK your opponent with this deck. Hopefully you guys understand, enjoy. Like if you did, it means a lot to me, and I will catch you guys later. So, peace.